My name is Hope Allwine. I'm a digital accessibility specialist here at Accessible Web, and today we are going to be covering Beyond Basic Accessibility, WCAG through a Neurodiversity Lens. I'm going to go ahead and warn you that I have been tripping over the words neurodiversity and neurodivergent, so please be patient with me. So we are going to cover the definition of neurodiversity and neurodivergent in this presentation, and then do a basic overview of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which is WCAG. And then we're going to do kind of a deep dive into concepts that are recommended to be aware of when you are working with neurodiversity environments and the success criteria that are related to them from WCAG. And then we'll do a kind of a wrap up with neurodiversity and inclusive design. See, there you go. All right, let's get started. So first things first, what is neurodiversity? The term was originally coined in 1990 by Australian sociologist Judy Singer. It is a concept embraced in both sociology and psychology, emphasizing social aspects over medical terminology. Singer wrote about the concept in her 1998 sociology thesis, bringing a new perspective to light, positing that people with different brain types are not abnormal, but bring different skills to the table. The paradigm shift was then continued by Dr. Nick Walker, with the changing of traditional views on the normal brain versus atypical brains. So neurodiversity views variations in the human brain as a natural condition, whereas individuals a mix of distinctive strengths and weaknesses rather than inherent limitations. The way I tend to think of neurodiversity is that there's more than one way to solve a problem. Think about when you're putting a puzzle together. Some people like to build the border first, while others prefer to dive right into the center. Me personally, match pieces with the image provided, and sometimes I switch gears and start matching the actual shape of the puzzle pieces to the puzzle itself. The end goal is the same, but how you get there is up to the individual. And there are some people that get very frustrated with puzzles, while others find them very relaxing. Now we're going to look at neurodivergent. In terms of the puzzle analogy, let's look at some conditions that are labeled as neurodivergent and how that fits into the scheme of neurodiversity. The Cleveland Clinic definition is neurodivergent is a non-medical term that describes people whose brains develop or work differently for some reason. This means the person has different strengths and struggles from people whose brains develop or work more typically. While some people who are neurodivergent have medical conditions, it also happens to people where medical conditions or diagnosis haven't been identified. So neurodivergent is not a one-size-fits-all definition. It can include many more conditions that are labeled within this presentation. Neurodivergent should not be put in a negative connotation, but rather a different approach to a traditional thought process. Let's look at some common conditions that are considered neurodivergent. First one being the autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, which is a range of complex brain developmental conditions that can affect social skills, cause sensory issues, and often lead to a narrow range of focused interests. There's also attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD, which is a developmental disorder primarily characterized by a pattern of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. And these next three I will be mispronounced. I apologize for that. First one being dyslexia, which is characterized by an impaired ability to read and recognize written language. There's also dysgraphia, which is difficulties with expressing thoughts through written language and impaired ability to understand handwritten language. And finally, dyscalculia, which is an impaired ability to understand, learn, and communicate mathematical concepts. So now let's look at this is going to be a very basic overview of WCAG. WCAG is the set of guidelines to make websites and digital products usable for people with different disabilities, including those who are neurodivergent. There are 3 levels of conformance within WCAG, including A, AA, and AAA. A is the minimum requirement, where AAA is the highest. Most legislation and regulations require at least WCAG version 2.1 AA levels. WCAG is based on the POUR principle, which are perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. For more in-depth information regarding WCAG, we do have other webinars, as well as our Manual Audit Monday series, which goes through each success criteria. Let's look at some of the recommendations for creating inclusive, neurodiverse environments within your websites or products so they can be utilized by a wider audience. We're going to discuss concepts that are essential to neurodiversity and then the related WCAG success criteria associated with each one and why it is important. So we're going to start with plain language, which is the basic concept is keep the content simple, avoid technical jargon, and make sure that the language of the page or parts. The two success criteria that are related to this concept is 3.1.1, language of page. It's important for assistive technologies to be able to identify the language and change internal settings so it can be read properly. Imagine if you're listening to a page that is in Spanish, but your screen reader isn't reading it in English. It's probably going to sound a little bit weird. The second one is 3.1.5, reading level. While it is a AAA success criteria, the idea is that web content should be at a basic reading level, so it doesn't matter how much education you have or if you have difficulty reading, you can still understand the content. The second concept is the ability to extend time requirements. So if possible, avoid time limits, but if it's required, make sure that there is a way to extend time if needed. The success criteria related to this one is 2.2.1, timing adjustable. Not everybody processes information at the same rate. So if there is a time requirement for something like filling out a form or completing a task, it is required to be able to extend that time or pause it. Our third concept is having alternate forms of the same content. Content should have secondary formats to ensure that everybody can engage with it. There are three success criteria that I've identified for this one. First one being 1.1.1, which is non-text content. All images and non-text content need to have a text alternative, unless it's a decorative element or it meets an exception criteria like logos. Another good thing to consider is for graphs or infographics to have a data table with the data or having a figure that describes the content in text. The next two success criteria kind of go hand in hand. It's 1.2.2 captions and 1.2.5 audio description. The principle is being able to represent your video in text or with audio descriptions is helpful for neurodiversity as some people learn differently. I personally hated watching videos in school and I didn't learn a lot from them. I digest information better through text and did a lot of pausing and writing notes during videos when I was in school. Moving on to our next set of concepts, our first one being consistency. So keeping multiple use content items in the same location and having the same labels like navigation menus is vital. There's two success criteria that go hand in hand again. We have 3.2.3, consistent navigation, and 3.2.4, consistent identification. These two success criteria ensure that information is consistent, so components like navigation stay in the same place, they have the same names. Consistency is more valuable than most people realize when it comes to neurodiversity, as think of it as kind of a building block that prevents distractions and keeps things predictable. Our next concept is to avoid physical reactions. Ensure that there is a way to pause or hide moving content like GIFs or videos. The success criteria, there's two separate success criteria for this one. There's 2.2.2, which is pause, stop, and hide. And I can tell you personally, having the ability to pause moving objects on websites is very important to me. The ability to pause is invaluable. You never know how motion can impact a user. Even if it's just a marquee where text is scrolling across the screen, it can be very distracting and even off-putting to some people. And then the second success criteria is 2.3.1, 3 flashes or below threshold. This was originally intended for epilepsy type conditions where flashing lights can trigger adverse physical reactions, but constant motion can distract and cause problems with other neurodivergent conditions like ADHD. And our last concept is ensuring that are identified and easily correct. Make sure that form fields have good instructions and proper error messages and suggestions. The two success criteria that go with this one is 3.3.1, error identification. We've all been there where you're trying to fill out a form and you hit submit and then an error pops up. It's frustrating. The difference is that for neurodivergent people, especially ones with autism, it can cause more problems than you traditionally think, as it disrupts more than one process for them. Make sure instructions are clear and errors are quickly identified through text. And 3.3.3, error suggestion. Error suggestion makes it easier to see a correct format for fields like email or phone numbers, and then the user can easily fix their area and move on without any more interruption. And that concludes some of the success criteria. This is not an exhaustive list. This was just some of the ones that have been easily identified that it fits within the neurodiversity lens. So we've covered a lot in this webinar, and I want to wrap it up with some key points to consider when designing an inclusive environment for neurodiverse people. First, recognize that every brain works differently, and keeping options open and considering multiple perspectives is key to design. Second, user testing is invaluable for gathering feedback and incorporating diverse user experiences into product development. Third, integrating accessibility from the start expands product reach to a wider audience. And last, focus on the valuable skills and unique viewpoints users bring rather than perceived deficiencies. And that wraps up my presentation. Again, we will have how accessible web can help. And we offer RAMP. We also have our webinars and other educational components like our, yeah, I'm sorry, I completely lost my train of
No
thought.
worries. I can jump right in here. So yeah, I dropped a coupon code for Ramp, which is our platform. So it's kind of the fantastic central way to manage your accessibility strategy. It offers automated tools as well as a structure for your manual approach. We also obviously offer services and consulting. So if you have any accessibility needs, no matter what they are, please reach out, and we're happy to chat about your unique use case.